Hello everybody, it's Vito Solo and I'm going to be doing a video on my Vito Solo Tech channel. And this video is going to be about the i7, like first gen i7 920. This one came out in around 2008, and back in the day there was like a really powerful processor because I think it was one of the I think it was one of the first 4-core 8-thread processors at the time. I think there was also Xeons too, but this is like the first i7 that came out, so it was a really powerful and pretty decent processor. But some of the Xeons were like 6-core 12 threads. Those were really good too, but this was still a pretty decent, like a really good chip back in the day, because most people were running like back in that time, like 2008, it'd be like Core 2 Quad Q6600s, which I have some boards for that, so if you guys want to see those, I'll be making those next video. But anyways, I found that system outside in the rain, and there was no damage. Like all the parts work, power supply, everything. I'm going to be showing off the parts later on. But the motherboard, it works, but it keeps, like, it doesn't accept the drives. I've tested the drive it came with and one of my personal boot drives that I've used for like testing systems, but I might have to do a fresh install of Windows to see if I can get it working. But I have to keep trying with any of the methods I have, which is like either fresh copy of Windows or maybe a fresh drive, I don't know. Or I've tried different RAM too. I'm gonna try a couple different things and I'll let you know which method worked for me. But there's plenty of things you can do to check and see if the motherboard works. But I know it works, I just have to get it to boot. That's the problem. Like it boots once when I took out the CMOS battery, but it wouldn't open up the thing again and it would just shut off. So that's something I'm gonna have to figure out later on. And here's a look at the motherboard with everything on it. And honestly, it looks pretty good. But for some reason, the how they mounted it back in the day, it was upside down. And I never seen an old motherboard like this with such crazy cooling. Like even nowadays, you don't see the fans like crazy cooling like that unless you buy a very high-end motherboard. So something like this was high-end. And as you can see, the chip is mounted upside down. I don't know if they still do that with X processors. Like this wasn't considered X. It probably was considered an X processor, but it doesn't say X on it. But this was their first attempt at something high-end, like really high-end, with a different socket, as far as I know. And yeah, each stick 2 gigs of RAM. DDR3 was new when this came out. Like this was the first attempt at DDR3, so 2 gigs was like how they did it. And yeah, this chip felt big, man. i7 920. This was a really big chip for back in the day. Like no, the normal sizes were way smaller, but this one felt really heavy. And it looked pretty cool too. It looked better than the Core 2 chips. And as you can see, this motherboard, it had reset power buttons. Like I don't know any motherboards. I mean, there were some like motherboards for socket 775 for like the high-end CPUs, like the Q6600 and the newer ones after that. Those boards came with like these power buttons too. But yeah, it was still a new thing to have these kind of power buttons. Even has a reset and everything. And like I said earlier, the cooling was really cool. Like this, you don't see this on a modern motherboard anymore. I guess they're more efficient, but at the same time, like, yeah, you don't see this kind of cooling. This was the original case that it was in, because this case it's really big. It's a really big case. My brother wanted it, so he took the case. This is the power supply it came with. I'm not surprised that it came with a 750 watt power supply, because the card that was originally in here was power hungry. And this is the SSD it came with. Like, I'm surprised it even came with an SSD. Like, I'm surprised someone slapped an SSD in this computer. Because back then, that would have been really expensive. But yeah, that was actually in that computer. And this is it. Surprisingly, they used the stock cool. I thought they would have used something like a Hyper 212, but they used only the stock cooler, but it still did a pretty good job. But like, this was back when stock coolers were actually beefier. Like, it has copper and everything. Like, this is better than a modern stock cooler that you can get nowadays. Like, it actually cools way better. And the CPU is more, honestly, it's more, it kind of reminds me of 12th gen. And this is the card I put into it. Before, it had some Radeon card, but that card was garbage. It wouldn't even, drivers wouldn't even work. With this one, you could still use it and download drivers. I had this card lying around from like testing, so I decided to put this card in, and it actually would match up to what somebody would slap in if they were upgrading. So this card, I'd say it's somewhat accurate. And this is the case I ended up using because this also would have matched too, even though this one has 3.0 ports. This is the case that would have accurately matched this one. Now, originally, I had like white thermal paste, which was something that people used back in the day, which I didn't know, like, which is crazy. So I decided to slap some Corsair thermal paste on top of it, and it took a while to things done. And now I'm installing the cooler because this cooler is the only one that would fit on, like the only cooler that could fit on here. I have a beefier cooler, but that one's only for like regular size sockets, like a push one, but it would not fit on this socket, so I used the one it came with. I do have a Type 212, but it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, this cooler worked for it before, so I'm just gonna let this cooler continue doing its job. And pushing in the pins, well, it took quite a bit because sometimes those pins are like hard to actually get in, and I had to replace a couple of them, so like the push pin for the cooler. So yeah, it took some time to get that done. And me, I'm making sure that it is securely on there because sometimes these things don't clip on properly. And now I'm somewhat trying to cable manage this cable. That's why I'm looping it around this thing, and then try my best to do the best cable management I can with what the error had. But honestly, this motherboard looks pretty cool, and even the IO shield was pretty cool too. Like, most IO shields are plain, even I'd say nowadays, except for the ROG ones, but yeah. So now I'm installing this. I'm using the same power supply because this power supply still works and still kicking around. So I decided to use this one for the build. Now I'm finally installing the motherboard inside the case because I'm done installing the power supply. And lining up was a little bit annoying, but after I got everything set up, I did get it in there and it all works. And yeah, this case only, like, it only has USB 3, so I had to use an adapter that came with the other case, so I just reused it. But that adapter I actually took from my main computer because my motherboard does not have enough. And I'm finally installing the card, and honestly, it looks pretty good from the side. Like, it looks like a build that would match that error. And this is the finished build. It had a little booting issue, but I managed to fix it too because I had to like configure the motherboard to like, I had to forcefully like tell the motherboard in like the BIOS to select that drive and make sure it boots specifically to that drive. But honestly, I think this looks like a pretty cool machine. If I had something like this from that era, I think it would have been pretty cool. I would have been happy. And honestly, if y'all watch like LTT videos and you watch Terrence Intel Extreme Tech Upgrade, this actually looks like the first machine he would have used. It looks similar to what he would have used, except he had an FX machine, which was garbage. This would run circles around the FX machines. This thing was actually pretty decent, but for some reason, it doesn't like anything after 2010. It's probably the GPU, But if I probably slapped something better in there, it probably would have given a fair chance and added more RAM. But yeah. And here's me playing TF2. As you can see, everything runs good. There's no static. Well, at the beginning, yeah, there was some staticking. I think the drivers were just like still going through a little bit, like the display drivers. But everything seems to be fine. And everything seems to be running good. And there's no like you can tell it runs smooth. But then again, this game is like, I think it's 20 years old at this point. Or probably older than that. But it is a pretty cool machine. And the fact that a game like this can still run on it, and the fact that this game is still running is actually impressive. I actually played it recently, and it's pretty fun. And nowadays, like, anybody should be able to run this. If you can't run this game on your computer, then I don't know what you're doing, or what you even have. Like, you could easily build a budget machine to run this game. Like, come on. Oh hell, pick up a PC off the road, throw a graphics card in there, and there you go. You could play this and much more. And here we have BeamNG Drive. What do I have to say about this game? Well, as you can see, RAM limit. There's only 6 gigs of RAM on this machine, and it requires 16 gigs. Well, I think you could probably get away with 8, maybe, depending on how you run it. But yeah, I'd say, but the fact that it's saying 16 is pretty crazy. Which is pretty demanding. Like, most people still have, like, for their machines, either 16 gigs of RAM, which is like the standard. But I think the new standard, especially with DDR5, like, is becoming like 32 gigs nowadays. And this game was pretty tough to run. And as you can see, everything is taking its sweet time to load in. And as you can see from earlier, the menu was taking forever to load in too. And see, the car barely, it's taken so long to render in. It's still going. I didn't even press any buttons. You could see the rims. Look how long it takes to render everything. And I couldn't play this on full screen. I had to play this on windowed mode because for some reason it just was not working. So I just left it and continued to try. Like, see, I'm still loading. Now I'm finally driving. And it's just gonna get worse from here because as I'm driving, I think it's gonna have to try and render other stuff, or I think you'll see stuff pop in, but it is not good. It felt horrible to play this, man. Like, look at the delay. Look at how bad it is. It's so choppy and the quality looks terrible. Like, this looks like one of those old videos from like back in the day. Like 2010 YouTube when you're watching somebody's gameplay and it's just god awful. Like, this is god awful graphics. This is horrible. And this game, it is demanding, but you can build a pretty decent system that can run this game no problem, as long as you don't try and crank the settings up to something stupendous. But here, it's like, I think it's on the lowest setting, and it's still so bad. It was so hard to drive. I tried to drive. I can barely control my truck. I'm surprised I've made it this far in the game. Like, it was not possible. Like, look at the V, like, everything was max. I think the CPU, like, CPU and GPU were, like, in trouble. Like, they were both, I feel like the GPU especially was just not having it. Like, this was, like, not fun. Trying to play this game was not fun. Like, this game, was like impossible to play with this computer. Like trying to steer, you're steering, it's so delayed. You're trying to turn left when you already turned right, and it's like, wait, what the fuck? It's so delayed. And here is CSGO. You know, I thought that BeamNG Drive was worse, but this, well, this is a different story. I couldn't get my, I couldn't get my shooting, like, some of the movements weren't working properly. Like, I think I was trying to shoot or something. And you see, like, I'm going in the settings right now, trying to see what the hell is wrong with my controls. And I have no idea what's going on. Like, I remember making this video a while ago. Now I'm just over-recording over it, trying to remember exactly what happened, but I forget some of the stuff I did. But the game was just not working properly. This game was probably the worst one to play because the controls would barely work. Like trying to like play competitive CSGO with this machine was not possible in its current state. If I were to upgrade it to something better, then maybe, yeah. I'm surprised I got a kill, but these are bots. If I played against yeah, see, look, I died. Yeah, I died to bots. That's how bad this machine is. And this is CSGO. This is not even a hard game to run. I wouldn't, or no, this is CS2. Yeah, rip CSGO. This is CS2. This is not like the easiest game to run, the hardest game to run in the world. Like, this is pretty easy to run now. Like, if your machine can't run CSGO, or I know CSGO is a CPU heavy game, like, you also have a problem too. Like, come on. Like, what kind of computer are you using that you can't even play this game either? If you're using like something like this, then yeah, okay, yeah, you really need to upgrade. Or hell, pick up a better computer. Like, this is not, it's not that hard. But I guess if you don't know what you're doing, like if you don't know what to pick up, what's good, and the difference between the i7s and everything, and all the i5s, everything about processors, then you wouldn't, and it would be a difficult time. Like, I could show somebody two machines, and they'd be like, are they the same? Do they perform the same? They look like they would perform the same. And it'd be hard. And I'd understand, because it'd be like, oh, this is a gaming computer, I guess I can game and stuff. Not knowing that there's different specs. Like, they would think, oh, this is a gaming machine, I can game on it. Like, they're both gaming machines, let's both play games on it. But no, they'd be different machines. People cannot tell. Like, I had a guy ask me, he asked me a recommendation for two machines, and one of them was a Team Red 5, like Team Red 5, like, what was it, like 3600, and then with an RTX 2060. And then the second machine was a Team Red, like 5, like 5600X. And with that one, what was it called? It had a 3060 Ti instead of a RTX 2060. I'm like, wait, why don't you just go with the other one? And the thing is, it was like $50 more. He was asking me, what should I get? Should I get the first one or the second one? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it's obvious. Get the one with the better process. Well, not in my opinion, not really, because I prefer Intel. But get the one with the newer processor. And he's like, how do I know which one's the newer processor? I'm like, you know what, buddy? Just pick number 2. Just buy that machine. Trust me, it's better. The 3060 Ti is better than the RTX 2060. You get more VRAM if you even know what that is. So yeah, people don't really know. They see the machine, and he's like, but the first one's more beautiful. Like, the only thing that made it better looking is it had some extra RGB, and it didn't use the stock like Team Red cooler. It used like a deep cool cooler, so that's why the first computer looked more appealing and more like it just looked way nicer. But he's trying to get more for his money and have a good budget machine, and he wanted to go to the used market because he thought he can get a good deal, and he is getting a good deal with the second machine because he's getting more performance out of the second one. But it just didn't look as impressive as the first one. I'm like, just get the second one. You can worry if you want to make it look good in the future, you can add things to make it look good, but the second one's better for your money, and it's only like 50 bucks more because the first machine was 800 Canadian and the second machine was like 850 Canadian. I'm like, are you complaining? Like, really? Just get the second one. 50 bucks for like substantially better parts. Like, it's a no-brainer. Well, to me it's a no-brainer, but he doesn't know much about computers, so I can't really like fault him there. Like, but yeah, that's why people wouldn't really know. Overall, it was a decent computer. Honestly, it's something good for like mid-range games, like anything before 2010. Maybe you can push in a 2011 title, or maybe some budget indie games, but anything probably 2012 or 13 and past that, probably not playable, because as you can see, CSGO was a stuttery mess, and BeamNG Drive, well, that game can push hardware, but it was not even on like high. I think it was like medium or low, and it's still, with its measly 6 gigs of RAM that computer came with, it could not. Maybe if I added like 16, I could have done that because I had more, but I just wanted to see how good it would be with the hardware it came with, and it was all right with other games like TF2. TF2, it ran great with TF2, but because I actually had fun playing TF2, but I picked the wrong map, the wrong game mode with the soup case, and that took like an hour because that one sucks. Later on, a friend told me, yeah, don't do the soup case one. That one takes forever, and it's just a camping mess. So I should have played like something else, but in that game. But that game is fun, and to this day, people still play the game. Honestly, I might even play some TF2 after this because it's still fun. It's still a fun game. But a lot of people love new games. Like, you don't have to play a new game. You can play older games and have fun. I know I have a badass computer right here, like a god tier overkill. I'm not trying to flex. I'm not gonna play god tier games on it all the time, or highly graphical games. I'm gonna play whatever I want. It's my PC, and I can play whatever I want on it. But going back to the topic, that other computer, it's fine. You could probably turn it into a server, or hell, use it as a budget retro machine, or play some older titles. And this was thrown out. Imagine you had nothing. You didn't really have anything to play on, and you found this, fixed it up. You could play some games. Some cheap or free games. Like TF2, it's free. You pick that computer up, clean it up, play some TF2, have a hell of a time. But anyways, it's alright for what it can do, but it is definitely outdated. It cannot play anything modern. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video on this i7 920 computer, and if you guys want a part 2 of me, if you want me to like update, like put more RAM in it, and like maybe push it with a better graphics card, like maybe a 1050 Ti, actually not a 1050 Ti, something like that or better, to see if we can push the CPU. Actually, no, I'll probably put a 1060, but if you want to see that, let me know down in the comments. If you want a part 2 to this, maybe I'll consider it. I don't want to test it again because it was annoying to test, but if you want a part 2, let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching my tech channel, and I'll see you guys again soon in the next video.